My name is Carolyn Hancock, and I'm the chairperson of both Angels Care and Thembelihle School, and have been for quite some time. This is a position I never in my wildest dreams expected to fulfill. I never imagined I'd be part of such incredible outreach organizations. I'd happily been continuing my life for several decades as a scientist, and it all changed back in 2011. I was actually trying to pay the school fees of one of our staff members that work for us. I couldn't do an EFT, and I couldn't make a phone call, and I couldn't do anything. So eventually I said, just tell me where the school is and I will go and pay the school in cash. And when I arrived, I found a shack with 120 children being taught by one teacher with absolutely no educational resources whatsoever. It was a cold day. There were holes in the roofs. There were no windows, no doors, nothing. And yet teaching and learning was happening, and this woman was completely committed to these 120 children. And so I said to her, this is just not right. They shouldn't be here. And she said, well, actually, it's much worse than it looks. We're being thrown out of the shack at the end of the year and we've got nowhere to go. I said, don't worry, I'll see what I can do to help, and we'll build you some classrooms somewhere. I went home and told my family, who all thought I was quite mad, and then set about trying to find somewhere, which was a lot more difficult than I thought. But one day, on driving past Howick Methodist Church, I noticed that they had a couple of extra prefabs outside. I could see it from Main Road. And something made me drive in. And I drove and I spoke to the minister there, and I said, I see you've got a few prefab buildings here. Don't you want to take over start a primary school? Because there's 120 children and they need a school, and we could really do with your help. And he said, no, actually, you can't have my prefabs, but absolutely, we have a place. And that was when he took me up to 90 Main Street, this beautiful property that had been bought by the Brentwood United Methodist Church. And he said, if you build the classrooms, you are very welcome to start a primary school here, because that's actually been the vision of our group at Howick Methodist Church ever since our inception in 1993. And so we set about building the first three. They were made out of precast concrete because they had to go up over Christmas. And unbelievably, in January 2012, the primary school at Thembelihle started. And it started with those 120 children that were in the shack, previously known as Merit Christian School. So now, Thembelihle consisted of the preschool and the primary school, but it only went up to grade 3. One incredibly special aspect of the work that we do at Thembelihle and Angels Care is the incredible global partnership that we have with both Brentwood United Methodist Church and CUSP in the USA. 20 years later, these relationships are thriving, with both the Americans visiting us here in Howick and getting to know the children and our staff better, and me or one of our board members going across to see them and their congregation annually. And with this amazing collaboration with both the church here as well as in America, and this enormous amount of support and love that there was for the children from near and far, we were able to add on additional classrooms over the years, and every year we added on another grade until we reached the end of grade 7. But actually my job had to do with the criminal justice system. And I knew how high the rate of sexual assault was in South Africa. And with working with these children at Thembelihle, I became very aware of how education was changing their lives. But education is just one part of changing a child's life. If you're really wanting to take a child out of poverty, you need to look after their nutritional well-being, which Angels Care was doing a fantastic job of. So was Thembelihle, but to a limited degree. We also needed to take care of their healthcare needs, and I also became very aware of the fact that many of them were living in this enormous state of trauma. Angels Care, being situated opposite the police station in Morling Street, was the ideal place to start a healthcare facility. And so I decided to give up my full-time job and to make Angels Care and Thembelihle the end of my life's work. And in 2015, we opened the healthcare center. So by now, they were having their nutritional needs taken care of, their educational needs taken care of, body, mind, and spirit. Basically, these children between the two organizations were really, really well looked after. In about 2018, the property next door to Thembelihle School became available to buy. And so we doubled the size of Thembelihle. And in 2018 and 2019, a massive expansion campaign went on at Thembelihle. Mr. Hugh Queener, who actually is a member of Brentwood United Methodist Church, along with other members of Brentwood United Methodist Church, actually formed a separate non-profit known as CUSP, Creating Unity, Shaping Purpose. And they formed CUSP specifically because we were now looking at expanding the facilities, both at Angels Care and Thembelihle, but we started at Thembelihle. Not only would we double the number of children that we would look after, but we wanted to improve the quality of the education that we were offering. And so we then added in things like a fantastic library. We started a STEAM-based curriculum where we focused on science, technology, English, mathematics and the arts. We raised 50% of the money here and 50% in the States. And during 2019, there was a great flurry of activity and we built this unbelievable campus at Thembelihle. So Thembelihle was just doing fantastically. We went into 2020, we were so excited because we had this amazing new facility and we felt like we were on a roll. And COVID hit. And COVID in South Africa, particularly with school children, was an exceptionally long time. It started in 2020 and masks only came off in 2022. It was almost a 3-year time period. And so both Angels Care and Thembelihle continued to grow, thrive and expand despite COVID. But what we could actually do was still limited. We needed extra space. So we managed to raise sufficient money to buy both properties that we wanted to be involved in. Both the old agricultural hall, which was very well situated for the children, and then we bought the property which was completely vacant next door to 38 Morling Street. And that was meant to create a new early childhood development centre. We managed to raise the funds both locally and abroad, but mostly through our American funders, through the enormous generosity of CUSP and all of their membership. I was actually on the phone to having a Zoom call with a friend who's an architect in Australia, and she put together a whole professional team that consisted of both Australians and South Africans. So we never paid one professional fee. The engineers, the architects, everybody did everything pro bono. And during 2023, we moved all of the children from the preschool into the old agricultural hall. That was the hive of activity. And on our new property, we have literally landed up with, many people will say, the nicest preschool they've ever been into in South Africa. Thembelihle preschool moved from the old parsonage at the Howick Methodist Church, and the preschool children from Angels Care joined with them, and we then had 2 classes per grade in the preschool. So we now have 150 preschool children here, and we have nearly 500 children at the primary school at Thembelihle. We then renovated the old house. That was the original house of Angels Care. So our healthcare facilities at Angels Care became far more usable. We have 2 social workers now, 2 nursing sisters. The old house actually became an old house again. It's now an emergency overnight shelter for children who have nowhere to go. It's their temporary home, and it's a beautiful home. At the agricultural hall, we restored this magnificent old building in the perfect position. The children can all walk there easily from the settlement. And there we offer an aftercare program for 180 children every afternoon, and those are high school children and primary school children that choose to come to us in the afternoons. And then we opened a cafe, but this time a cafe owned by Angels Care, and it's just become one amazing community hub. And so now we have this extraordinary situation of 2 organizations absolutely intricately linked, started by the same congregations of people from both the Howick Methodist Church and the Howick and the Brentwood United Methodist Church in America. It was just through this joint vision that we now have a fully fledged preschool, most magnificent primary school, after-school facility for children, a healthcare facility. We look at sexual assault, nutritional issues. We look after children, mind, body, and spirit. Angels Care and Thembelihle truly do that. They look after every aspect of a child's existence, and they draw them out of poverty. So our aim has always been to change the narrative in South Africa, bring children out of extreme poverty, not only for themselves, but for their families. And we are beginning to see that happening. And it's so extraordinary to see it happening within my lifetimes, and it's happened within other people's lifetimes, is that the children that have come to these schools that are now academics, we have people that are accountants, doctors, artisans of various sorts, entrepreneurs, and the first thing they do is they go and they get their parents out of the settlement and they buy a home. They change the narrative. They actually break that cycle of poverty. In the words of Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. That is really, it epitomizes what has happened here. What has seemed like impossible odds have been encountered more times than could possibly have been thought of over the past more than 3 decades. And yet every single time, people through their creativity and their passion and their determination and this unbelievable global partnership between South Africa and the United States of America has enabled us to grow despite the challenges in South Africa. All it takes is very ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And as soon as they do that, then this is what happens. We change the lives of children for the better.